Are you willing to zero out for the Oasis? Are you willing to fight? I am Parzival of the High Five. In the name of Artemis, in the name of H, in the name of Daito and Sho, we ask you to join us on Planet Doom. In the name of James Halliday himself, help us save the Oasis.
And that's a clip from Ready Player One. Delighted to say Steven Spielberg joins us. Hello, Steven. How are you, sir?
How are you? I'm fine.
Very good. You feel free to drink your coffee as you wish.
Tea,
all the way.
but thank you.
Tea, is it? Okay, all the way through. I don't know really where to begin. Take us into the world of 2045 and Ready Player One.
Well, the world is unlike the world today, but very similar to the world today in certain pockets of the world. It's a dystopian existence where great economies have collapsed and people are struggling, as they are in many parts of the world today. It's sort of a lawless time, and it's a time with no middle class, with great wealth and great poverty. And it's also a time where technology has offered individuals a chance to escape from that dystopia and into a virtual world called the Oasis, which is a place that everybody wants to exist.
And I think our main hero here, Wade Watts, says in 2045, we stop trying to improve the world's problems just to outlive them. It's a pretty kind of bleak setup, isn't it?
Well, it's a bleak setup to create a contrast between Wade's existence, his sad existence, living with his aunt and her abusive boyfriend. His parents passed away a number of years before. And the existence of the Oasis, where he feels more at home because he can be anybody he wants to be. He can design what he looks like. He can meet new friends and never have to give up who he really is in the real world.
The Oasis is quite a tough thing to describe. So just explain. So this, in the movie, it's been set up by James Halliday, played by Mark Rylance. This is a virtual reality world where everything is possible. How do you even begin to describe what it's like to be in the Oasis to a radio audience, Stephen?
Well, I guess you just imagine if you went to a dance club and you had a chance to dance with anybody you wanted to, except there was no gravity. And you got to dance in a zero-gravity dance club where up is down and down is up and everything is topsy-turvy, and yet you are focused on the beautiful eyes of the woman you love, who in fact is an avatar in this same world, and who you are falling desperately in love with in this world. And so it's an escape into the imagination. It really is. And the film was created by collecting, I thought we collected some of the best imaginations to help build this world.
So the book is by Ernest Cline. It was a huge, huge success. Did you read the book and think, this is for me? Where did you enter into this story?
Well, I entered into the story when I read a scene in the book, a 5-page conversation in the novel written by Ernest Cline between Parzival and Artemis, our boy and girl, hero and heroine. And it suddenly grounded the entire crazy construct of two separate worlds, one real, one virtual, that came from Ernest Cline's imagination. But when I got to the reality of that relationship, I said, this is going to be a movie also about friendship, about forging bonds, forging friendships, and working together to achieve your goals. And that's where I really got sort of sucked into the story and wanted to make a movie out of it.
Was it a challenge or particular goal to make sure that the balance between the real world characters that we believe in and want to follow and this extraordinary virtual reality world, which is so amazing, getting that balance right must have been a challenge for everybody?
Everybody it was. It was a challenge for the actors because I used a lot of actors who hadn't done a lot of work before. Olivia Cooke and Ty Sheridan had made some movies, but they were, Ty was 19, Olivia was 20. Lena Waithe had really not acted. She was a writer, but I liked her so much I wanted her to play a part in this. So on top of acting and actors coming onto a set, which is maybe only the fourth or fifth set they've ever walked on in their careers, and there's no set there. It's a big white room, and they're wearing what looks like wetsuits, and they've got helmets and cameras and dots all over their faces. It's a rude awakening because it was very, very important for me to make everybody understand that we were going to shoot two films. We were shooting a very conventional film in the real world with real sets, real cars, real sky, real colors. And then we were going to create a world called the Oasis where all the actors would have to act through their avatars, characters that we will create for them. But they will act through those avatars, much like the movie Avatar that everybody's familiar with, or the movie Planet of the Apes with Andy Serkis, having to play the simian.
And with all this extraordinary high tech, and it's 2045 in the Oasis, they're in love with the 1980s. So there's
Yes.
So what?
Figure that. Go figure that.
Well, I was going to know.
That's Ernest Cline's genius. I don't know.
But
I
you're
didn't
the
come up
genius
with
here.
that. I didn't come up with that.
But they love the 80s.
I love the 80s too. I mean, Ernest loves the 80s. Ernest, when he wrote the book, his favorite decade's the 80s, probably because it was the least political decade out of many decades. Under Reagan, the economy was relatively robust, and there were problems all over the world, and problems in America too, but not like there were in the 60s, not like there is today. And so Ernest chose the style, the music, the iconic references of all the movies, many of which included my own movies. And that became the playground he wanted to set the story in.
Was that odd? Because obviously pop culture is writ through this movie from start to finish, but you are so responsible for an awful lot of the pop culture. You're referencing your own work, which must have been strange.
Well, if you read the book, you'll see how much of my own work I had to leave on the cutting room floor because I was not going to build a vanity mirror out of Ready Player One and just stand there primping for the world to see everything I ever directed or produced in the 80s. But I left a few significant movies in because I couldn't cut them all out.
Yeah. You did. But there are a couple of references I just want to mention. Certainly, I mean, this is a very funny film as well. It was the Holy Hand Grenade a nod to Monty Python?
It was a complete nod to Monty Python.
Okay.
Of course it was. The Holy Hand Grenade is...
Of Antioch, yes.
Of Antioch,
It's the sacred relic which Brother Maynard carries, as I remember.
That's exactly right. So there's a lot of references in the movie based on our favorite films and films that had a cultural impact on the world, like Monty Python continues to this day to have a cultural impact.
Silent
on
Running
the world. Silent Running gets a nod. Alien gets a nod. There's a lot of films that get a nod. And Back to the Future, the film I executive produced, gets a big nod because the DeLorean is front and center.
That's right. And in terms of that balance between real world and virtual reality, there is also another balance, isn't there, which is between, I mean, it's referred to as the nerdosphere, but keeping the geeks happy and keeping the mainstream audience happy.
I had to keep myself happy, and I'm a super geek. And so I geeked out making this movie. I really did. It was, it was a hard film to make. It's the third hardest film I've ever had to direct, just based on the layers of technology that the audience doesn't have to concern themselves with and won't even take away from their pleasure or enjoyment at watching the film. But it was a hard boulder to push uphill for all of us. And at the same time, what counterbalanced that for me was how geeky some of the references were and how much we enjoyed putting them in the movie.
You say it's the third most difficult. What were the first and second?
Well, by far, Jaws. Nothing has ever surpassed Jaws as being the hardest film I've ever had to make because I wasn't in control. The ocean was. Mother Nature really sort of, outmaneuvered all of us at every turn. And the second hardest film I ever had to make because it was a physical, grueling production was Saving Private Ryan.
And you were doing this, if I've got the chronology right, we spoke to Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep on the show for The Post. Were you doing this at the same time? Were these projects up and running? I mean, how did that work out?
Yeah, I started Ready Player One 3 years ago. And when I was developing the script with Zach Penn, the screenwriter, and Ernest Cline, who also wrote a script and wrote the book, I was working on goodness. I was working on BFG. I was working on Bridge of Spies. And then when I started production on Ready Player One, that's all I did for a year and a half. But when I had finished cutting together Ready Player One, but now we were waiting for ILM to generate close to 1,500 digital effect shots, which took a long time. I actually had a small break in my schedule, and by some miracle, The Post landed in my lap. It was a relevant, contemporary story about the past, but really about the present. And I felt a kind of, I guess, a public service need with Meryl and Tom to jump into that and tell that story while ILM was busy working on Ready Player One.
And what's going to catch your attention next?
Well, Indy 5 is the next movie I've got my eyes on, but that won't start till 2019.
Steven Spielberg, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Good. Thank you. Enjoyed talking to you.